Welcome back, radio entrepreneurs, listeners, and fans. I'm producer Jillian King, and I'm excited to introduce you all to the Winter 2024 FBA Family Business Panel Discussion, Family Transitions, When Families Start Too Late. In this panel, we will be covering topics including the telltale signs that a family has waited too late to start a transition, building the right transition team. What does it look like to educate the next generation about different facets of the business, and a wealth of topics beyond? This episode is part 1 of 3, and all of these discussions are intended to be highly relevant to family businesses, but also to entrepreneurs of all types. So be sure to follow Radio Entrepreneurs on LinkedIn, YouTube, Facebook, Spotify, or any of the many other platforms we stream on to catch each of the other segments as they go live. Before we get into the discussion, allow me to introduce our panelists. Today, we have a returning panelist you should know well, Stephen Wilchins, founding partner at Wilchins, Cosentino, and Novins. Wilchins, Cosentino, and Novins is a mid-sized law firm that provides high-caliber legal counsel specializing in private client services, trust and estate planning, tax planning, and extensive business knowledge in advising clients on business succession planning and other matters affecting family and closely held businesses and entities. Next, I'm excited to introduce our guest panelist, Chris Lynch, President and CEO of Lawrence-Lynch Corp. Lawrence-Lynch Corp is a family-owned and operated civil construction company specializing in public infrastructure projects, including roadways, utility improvements, and airport projects. Welcome. So glad you both can be with us today. Finally, I would like to introduce the panel's moderator, Radio Entrepreneurs host and CEO of Mage LLC, a management consulting firm since 1985, Jeffrey Davis. Welcome, Jeffrey. I will now hand the conversation over to you.
Thank you very much, Jillian. And, thank you for all your efforts. Jillian, for those listening, is the producer for Radio Entrepreneurs and the producer with a little something extra, always doing a wonderful job. And hello, Chris and Stephen. Thank you for joining us today. This is, for me, a really tough subject. Not for me personally, but when I listen to my clients and I see companies, this is something that people just don't have a handle on because they only do it once. So let me just start. I'll throw a question out. Whoever wants to take it first can, and I will obviously participate in some of the answers. What does it look like to educate the next generation in a family business, including timing, job descriptions, authority, and entitlements? This is something that I'm sure a lot of people have a lot of trouble with. Stephen, do you want to go first?
Sure. I think the first thing is that you want to encourage your next generation to get experience outside the company. I think it would be important for family members to have probably 2 to 5 years experience in areas that may be related to the family business, but certainly would give them a good experience of dealing with people, and in dealing in an environment where they are not expected to be running the company in a few years. So I think that once they have that experience, then it would be important to think through a good path of their experience in the family business, meaning get experience in different areas, whether it's the marketing side, the accounting side, the operational side, manufacturing side, which would be helpful to give the next generation a broader experience and depth in understanding the business, as well as working with different types of people that are employed in the company. So that would be the foundation, and then have the patience to encourage these people to move up the ladder at the right moment, without the expectation that it will happen automatically. I think it's important that they have to earn that next step.
Yeah, I would agree largely with what Stephen says, in particular as it relates to outside employment. I think outside employment is a great opportunity for your children to be in a position where, as Stephen mentioned, they're not expected to take the lead, and yet they get to work for other employers so that they then enter your business with a broader view. I also think, insofar as when that education begins, in a closely held business or in a family business, particularly a family business, these children get to see that commitment that you have to the business from a very early age. So from the time that they're in high school and they recognize that you're working far more hours than a 9-to-5 job, that's forming their education, and that is giving them opportunity to consider at an early age what it would look like if they decided to run this business. So from there onto their education, where you would certainly encourage them to learn the critical process of thinking, and ideally, if they have an opportunity to take some classes that somewhat relate to either your business or business in general is helpful. Then off to the outside employment opportunities that we spoke of. And then when they join your company, they do have an opportunity, unlike their peers, where they can be put in a position of leadership as soon as they earn it. Again, I think they need to earn those positions, and as they do, that creates a great learning opportunity for them.
Yeah, I just want to interject some. I like what Chris said about working hard, because a lot of times your children or the next generation think that you're the owner and you're making a lot of money, and everything is easy. But I think, Chris, what you said is true, that if you're probably one of the first ones to come in or the last one to leave, work on Saturdays, work on Sundays. And that's what it takes to really, have a successful business. And I think your children, the education that your children will get from that, demonstrating that, they'll learn those qualities if they really want to have the aspiration of becoming successful in the business themselves.
Well, you both said a lot, and I can't break down every point, but I want to just say, as a family business consultant, as somebody who's come out of my own family business, I'm going to address it in a couple of ways. One, I've always found in consulting to family businesses that there's a line on the ground, and that is people who've worked outside the family business have corporate standards. They've learned proper professional standards of a business, and people who have never worked outside the business tend to have family standards or personal standards, and that can get to be a little muddy over time. So learning those standards. I do know, just to address first Steve's comment, that when I started to work for my father, he said to me, he used to wake me up at 5:15 in the morning and say, "We're going to be in the car in 15 minutes." And he used to say to me, "You're going to be the first one in, the last one out. There's no job that's too dirty for you, and you'll work harder than anyone else, or I'm sending you home and you're never working here." And I think that was a good rule. And the other thing was that I left the family business because I said, I've learned everything that I can learn from you. Now I want to learn from others outside of the business, which is what I did. So I think that just, bless you, that just follows, the lines of what both of you have said. So I want to just say, because we could talk about authority, entitlement, some of the other parts of my question. We could go on the first question, I think, for our full segment. But let's move on a little bit. Mm-hmm. Should there be a team in the family business transition? This is something I see often within a family business, that sometimes the family becomes the team making the decision. And I think that this is a topic that we could all have opinions on or thoughts on. Anybody want to address this one first?
Well, if I can speak to my transition, there wasn't so much a team. It was my dad, and he decided how it was going to be, and certainly he got guidance, and he was always good about that from attorney and professional accountant, things like that. but there was not necessarily a team, and there wasn't a real well-defined transition plan. However, he had certainly thought it out very clearly, and he certainly was very committed to it. So it worked out. It worked out seamlessly for us. However, in hindsight, I do think, and I'd ask Steve to define more of what that team would be. I think a little more of a team would be very valuable in a transition.
I think adding to that, I think the team could be both someone, a board, a functioning board would be very helpful to the major shareholder who wants to encourage the younger generation to move up, as well as the outside advisors, both management consultant, professionals, attorney, and accountant. But I think what's also important is to get the buy-in from key employees that are non-family members as the business grows. Some of the non-family members are integral and very important to the success of the business. And you would want to have their perspective and insight on how we should make this transition, both from recognizing their value, but also recognizing their experience in encouraging and mentoring these family members.
Well, I just add to the point that I think if it's all internal, it's not always healthy. Because again, you don't have the full perspective. If you have outside people, attorneys, accountants, consultants, somebody with an outside perspective, board members, I think some combination is good. Not all internal though, because again, what you're trying to do is create standards for the business that are business related, not just family related. So I would move on from there. So the next question, yes, Steve?
I just want to mention something though on the professional side though. I mean, just to have the accountant or the attorney involved or the consultant, it's important that those professionals have the experience to also help the major shareholder. Just serving as an attorney doesn't mean that they're, the leader should understand that they need the right professionals in the right situations. And so to the extent the attorney is, focused more on litigation or labor law or something, they have to realize that there are other professionals that have that experience that would give them invaluable opportunity to learn and be more successful in what they're doing.
Well, I think you're right. Expertise is important. And you and I have both seen also where objectivity can cloud expertise.
Right.
And we want to make sure that whoever's on the team has objectivity and is honest about stuff. I mean, for me personally, I've always been fond of one of my clients who once said to me, if I ever feel you're not telling me exactly what you think, I can't trust you anymore. I'm throwing you out of here. So being able to deliver the tough messages and realistic messages, better to do it now than later.
Right.
And again, that relates to my next question to both of you. And it's really about milestones and metrics. Since this may be the only time to do a transition for a generation, how does the family know that they're building the right team?
Well, Jeff, I think you just said it. If you have a team, whether it's outside, consultant, accounting, or to Steve's point, internal employees who are helping, if they're not sharing with you objective truth, then you probably don't have the right team. So you have to be the gauge of that, that advice that they're sharing with you, and does it line up with what you're looking for out of the transition, but is it also honest?
Also feel that it's important to move forward, build the team, even though the team may not be perfect. let the team make a mistake or two, improve on that, replace members in the team. That's what makes it successful, by making a mistake, understanding what they have not looked at or thought through, and then replacing it and improving it.
Okay, well, I'm going to move down to another topic, because you mentioned boards and boards of advisors before, Steve, but I'm going to ask you, what are the advantages of having, and this is one for you, Steve, really, of having trustees and trustees involved in the process? This is something I've seen also involved with my family. We had trustees involved, pros and cons. So I'll let you address it as someone who's probably been dealing with that through your whole career.
Are you speaking of it in context of a board, or just generally?
Trustees involved who get involved with the transition.
I think that to the extent the trustees have a good knowledge of the financial situation and the family, they play a role. However, to the extent the trustees do not have the experience in business, and they do not have the ability, and there are many trustees that serve in the role, but they don't see the issues coming down the road. And a lot of times they're not really thinking through all the potential issues that could happen, other than the sole role of serving as a trustee and the liability of serving as a trustee. So I think what I'm saying is that the trustees have to be very active. They have to be very experienced, and they have to have a good understanding of both the family members as well as the industry itself and the business.
Chris, did you want to chime in, or not?
No, Jeff, I think that makes perfect sense to me, what Steve said, particularly about their knowledge of the industry, the business, and the family.
So the next one for me is something that I've been involved with heavily through my career. It's the muddy area. And that is, how do you educate successive generations, current generation, that they might not be right, that their family might not be right, or have the abilities to run or manage the business moving forward? Very tough emotional issue and topic to address with people who have thought their whole lives that they were the ones, that they're entitled, or that their family is entitled.
Yeah, Jeff, I think when we talk about that and abilities and what they have or don't have, and how you'd share that with them, to me, quite honestly, if they have the passion, and if they recognize that the business and the longevity of that business is far more important than their career or their needs and wants, then I would think you can build around that, as long as they have that passion. It's not to say that I might have had the business acumen that my father thought would be the best fit, but certainly he knew I had the passion to be here the time that it took to run it and to look out for the employees and for the business. So outside of, if the passion were there and the other components may lack a little, I would think you could build a team around that. If the passion is not there, I think that would make it a far easier conversation for your family to share with them that, there may be better opportunities. They don't seem as invested, and they shouldn't be in a spot where they're not passionate about it. And there are other opportunities that they may want to pursue that are their passions.
I want to add something, though, to what Chris said, though. Passion is important. And to the extent as the major shareholder sees that passion on the next generation, we want to encourage that. But at the same time, to the extent that they're limited, the younger generation, in some way or somehow, or they feel that they cannot rise totally to the top, that doesn't mean you could still encourage the passion, encourage a position that would be worthwhile, meaningful, and a major impact on the company going forward. Doesn't mean it has to be the CEO though.
Well, and I'll just add one more, maybe you can agree or disagree with me. Being CEO is sort of like being in the Matrix, seeing the world happening all around you at a different speed. And I think that there has to be a predisposition to sort of process complexity at a certain level, because businesses are very detailed and have a lot of moving parts. And if you don't have the ability to really process complexity and are more vertically integrated in your thinking, it's a problem, I think, for leadership. And so that's something I look for also, that ability to sort of get into the details, but also raise yourself up and see the complexity of the whole thing.
Like that.
I agree, Jeff. I think you've both made great points. I agree 100% with what you've said. And I do think that there is a person who has that and there is a person who doesn't. And to Steve's point, he's very correct in that the passion doesn't necessarily give you the opportunity to take the CEO role or be the president. However, that passion should entitle you to a position that is valuable to the company and creates a career for yourself.
Well, I mean, I had a lot more questions. We're waiting for Jillian. Jillian, are you on with us?
Thank you, Jeffrey. That wraps up part 1 of this winter 2024 edition of the FBA Family Business Panel discussion. Thank you to all our listeners and viewers who have tuned in for this first segment on Radio Entrepreneurs. Links will be provided in the video's description below to parts 2 and 3 of the discussion to hear more on these topics. So be sure to check out those links and click subscribe just below the video if you're on YouTube, or follow if you are listening on one of our podcast platforms to stay up to date on all our postings as they go live. If you're a fan of our videos, please be sure to like, comment, share, subscribe, and press the bell button. It helps immensely. Radio Entrepreneurs is also active on LinkedIn, so be sure to follow our page there as well for more business advice and discussions. Until next time, goodbye and thanks for listening. We'll be back with more stories on Radio Entrepreneurs.